Is she a runaway or is she the victim of foul play? No matter which way you look at the facts, one fact remains. Megan is missing. Good evening, I'm Callie Daniels.
We are talking Megan is Missing, which is a found footage movie from 2011. Directed and written by Michael Goy. Goy primarily directed kind of TV shows from this point. Done a couple of films, but primarily known as a director of TV shows and also a cinematographer. Now, this was inspired by a case of some real missing girls that went missing, I think, in 2002. This movie is a work of fiction, just actually kind of inspired by those missing girls. Now, apparently this one caused a bit of a stir on TikTok in 2020 when, I guess, Generation Z found this movie and was shocked because it is obviously a found footage movie and kind of has that kind of realistic edge to it. I'm not going to come on to that again because it's deemed as very shocking and all of this. Let's talk about the plot first of all, however. So it is a found footage movie. It's kind of one of these ones which is kind of shot as a mixture of on video camera and kind of web chats and things like this, and focuses on two teenage friends who are 13 at the beginning of the movie, I think, and one of them is 13 and then 14, and one of them is very much a kind of like quiet, kind of mousy stay-at-home type, whilst the other one, Megan, is a bit more of a kind of a party girl. That's right, at 14. And it's essentially has a kind of a double-edged sword. First of all, it's kind of like, you know, what are your kids doing when you're not looking? It's a kind of a B plot. But the main kind of crux of the story here is about internet predators, or in this instance, a specific internet predator who lures Megan and ultimately abducts her, and then her friend Amy goes looking, trying to kind of find out what's happened. Really kind of being her best friend, really being the only one that kind of knows anything that might have gone on. And what will happen with her, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about a taste issue here, before we get into what works and what doesn't work. So I found this reception of this movie quite interesting because it's got a lot of negativity because it's quite shocking for some. Now, if you're an ardent horror movie fan and you've seen a movie like a Serbian film, that to me is more shocking than this. But it's up there. Now, if a movie is shocking and has a harrowing message, does that make it bad for some people, maybe good for others? To me, and how I would approach it, and I'm going to approach a review like this, its subject matter and a matter of taste is not indicative of the quality of the film. So when I'm going to be reviewing this film, I'll tell you, yes, this movie may upset you. It is a harrowing film. It is, but it's a well done film in that respect. So if you're going to be upset with movies that have a very dark source material, very dark kind of subject matter, then I'm warning you, this may not be the film for you. But to me, that doesn't take away from the actual quality of the production and the product. So my review is not based on how shocking I think it is or anything like that. In actual fact, I think this movie, well, we'll talk about it. I actually think it almost works in the other direction for me. But I have seen a lot of reviews that just slate this film because it's, you know, especially these kind of youngsters who haven't seen a lot of this type of kind of product. So yeah, so that's kind of, I have to talk about it because this movie does have some very, very dark themes and is very harrowing. Okay, so let's talk about what I think works without any spoilers and all this. So yes, to me, this movie is quite a well-made film. Because I absolutely 100% think it gets the message through that it's trying to do, and that is why you have these reactions. I'm not saying you should enjoy this movie and think it's a great time at the movies because of that, but I think it is a good movie because it succeeds in what it's trying to do. Is there some downsides? Yes, there is. I'll come on to it. But let me put it like this. If you were ever worried about, if you have kids and you were ever worried about them talking to strangers on the internet, if they watch this film, yeah, they're going to be scarred, but they ain't going to be meeting any strangers from the internet. Let me just put it like that. So I absolutely think this movie underscores in a bold red underline that the dangers of what could happen in these type of scenarios. And I also think it's it gives you a good idea of the manipulation that internet predators and kind of predators in general will use, especially to target young people who are impressionable. So I think the movie absolutely succeeds in what it's trying to do. Yes, it's shocking, but I've got to be honest with you. I think the movie is quite powerful in that respect. And is it exploitative? Maybe a bit, but I do have to say I think it works in regards to being a shocking film, but also I think making kind of like really showing you this is the ultimate, because you can tell people don't talk to people on the internet, strangers on the internet, it's going to be bad, and it's like, yes mum or whatever, but if you show them, you see something like this, not that I'm really suggesting you show kids this, but it would, right, I'm fully understanding now the horrors that this could kind of could end up in. But I also think, and if I have a problem with it, which I'm going to do, it's this part rather than that kind of the main thrust of the story, is there's also a kind of a B plot here in regards to, children of this age, children of, I'll emphasise that word, 13, 14, of this age. And there has been tackled before. We've seen movies like Kids that was in like 95 that came out, and the movie 13 that starred Rachel Evan-Wood have both tackled a similar kind of, not the murder side of it, but the kind of the kids being out of control and kind of having the parents having no idea what their kids are up to. So that's nothing new, but this again, it kind of shows like parents, they just want the kids out their hair, just don't want to have to deal with them, let them go out and we'll just assume everything's alright. And it shows you what these kids of 13 they're drinking, they're smoking, they're doing drugs, they're having sex, and there's even discussions of sexual activity younger than that. So I think as a kind of a B storyline, it's highlighting that issues that some parents I think choose to ignore, but bad parental kind of guidelines. Not watching children, and almost these kids just going off the rails because of it. So I think it has a couple of kind of powerful messages that kind of work in tandem, and ultimately are the kind of like the guideline to this story, so to speak. So outside of that, what can I say? I've got to say I think the performances were good. Some of them are meant to be a little cheesy, like that we have some folks kind of like news reports, they're meant to be a bit hokey, I think, but the actual main performances here, I got to say, I think were pretty strong. These two young girls, I think, did a good job here of some believable performances, believable kind of like conversations and kind of like repertoire that you would have for kind of people of that age and kind of what they would be talking about. And I like the fact that we have two very kind of different young girls here as well, but still seem like they would genuinely be kind of friends. And we get a few kind of like other kind of story threads about another girl who's kind of jealous of their friendship and things like this. But I got to say, I thought the acting was all pretty good. Now onto the actual kind of the technical side of stuff. This is a found footage movie. There is one little issue I have with this, which we'll come on to. But Goy being a cinematographer for the majority, I think, of his film career, it works in the fact that he knows how to set up a shot. Now the final scene of the movie is a long take, and it's actually it's mundane to a point, but I think it's very powerful. And again, I think it's a very good example of powerful filmmaking. So I have to say, I think this movie is pretty strong, and the way it's paced is interesting as well, because the movie doesn't have a lot of horror elements to it, overt horror elements, until the last 20 minutes or so. But because of that, it becomes quite jarring, and you kind of go from this kind of. But it makes sense in the story because it's a found footage piece. You know, things happen when it starts. You can't like jump backwards and forwards, if that makes sense. So you know, I think it works because you have a relatively kind of like drama, like opening kind of 40-50 minutes or what have you, and then the last thing is 22 minutes where the real kind of overt, kind of disturbing stuff happens, so to speak. So I actually do think it kind of works. So I'll be honest, I'm looking at some of the negative reviews here. I feel I might be in the minority, but I actually do think, you know, if taste issues aside, this is a strong, well-made film that I think has a powerful message, and that message is conveyed, and I think in a strong but kind of like realistic and believable and disturbing way. But I think it works well as a cautionary tale. What doesn't work, I have a couple of little nitpicks, to be honest. So this movie was made in 2011, but it takes place in 2007. The technology that they use would not exist in 2007. I used to work in the mobile phone industry, the cell phone industry if you're in the States, and video conferencing in 2007, nope, not like it is on here anyway. So yeah, the technology is a little bit kind of like, I don't know why it was made to be in 2007. I don't know why that decision was. Had they, even in 2011, it still would have been, you know, the technology, because they're clearly just using cameras rather than sort of, you know, cell phones and things. But yeah, the technology is a little bit of a kind of a skew with here. There's one plot element which I found was a little silly. The fact that the police find a piece of evidence which ultimately leads to the finale of the movie, and I'm thinking, why would that be there? That is the one piece of the plot I found very convoluted. There's a piece of evidence that the police find, and it's extremely convoluted about why it would be there. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But I've got to be honest with you, I think this movie was quite well made, and it even has some other elements. For example, it's like, just go back to some positives. You know, we have a couple of scenes where we see all these kind of other friends, and they're tying like pink ribbons around trees and stuff, as you know, in support. And it's all these like showing you these meaningless gestures that kind of people do that mean really nothing, to be honest. And it's just kind of like jumping on the kind of the bandwagon because, you know, there's kind of headlines and stuff like that. They're kind of the cheesy kind of recreations for the news and stuff like this. Should you watch this movie? I think it's a good film. I'll stand by. I think this is a good, well-made film. All the parts more or less work, outside of a couple of minor ones, like I've said. But there's no denying that this is going to be a taste issue. But like I've said, and it's worth reiterating again, the taste issue does not reflect the quality of the film. It's just whether you're going to like that film or not. There's films that are great, that are Oscar winners, that I'm not interested in. It's not my taste, but I can appreciate it. It's a good film. And I'm not saying this is like an Oscar winning film, but you can't just like write off a film because it's a little bit, you know, of bad taste. And I suppose the only other thing is that, yes, arguably I would say maybe it's a little bit exploitative at times. I don't know if it really needed to kind of have all these kids talking about sexual experiences when they were kind of 10 years old and things like that. To me, there were some elements here that didn't need to be in it. It made it more shocking. You know, it made it kind of like show that these kids were just out of control, and I get that's probably what it was going for. But there was a couple of, we have this party scene. We could have showed you that. This is one of our, you know, these girls having sex in the corner and things like this and doing drugs. And then we have them talking about sexual experiences. And I don't think it needed quite as much. I think you could have established that with the party scene and then really not add much else to it. But I guess it's kind of like, you know, it's going on those themes, and we're showing that the character of Megan is a damaged character. But yeah, arguably it does touch on a little bit of the exploitative side, but the end of it I wouldn't say. It's the kind of the beginning to me. Is the has the more of the exploitative kind of areas in it. It's the actual kind of, I think most people have a problem with the end. I actually think it's the beginning has that, to me, I would say maybe touches on a little bit more exploitative than it should be. But overall, I think it's a well-made, well-put-together film. It's not a film I would probably watch again, but I will say it's a strongly made film with good performances and has a powerful message that I think is conveyed well to the audience. So for me, it's a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.